This is the first part of a presentation to prepare you for the SPED 4010 course in research methods. In particular, this part concerns statistics, and I am going to first try to explain to you why you, as a master's student in special need education, should learn statistics. Let us start with some examples. In the first example, imagine a boy going to second grade who is referred to for evaluation due to poor performance at school and disruptive behavior. So you find out that this boy has already been assessed with a couple of tests, and there is a report on a full-scale IQ of 90 and a vocabulary standard score of 69. What does this mean? What should you do as a special needs education professional? The answer depends on understanding what these numbers mean. The second example, imagine that you read in the news that a team of researchers has announced a new screening tool to identify children with dyslexia. Supposedly, children of all ages can take a 20-minute test online and receive a recommendation that is supposed to be related to whether they should be followed up with more extensive evaluation or do not need that. So you read about this tool and you see that it reports an 85% sensitivity and 82% specificity for the first grades of elementary school. What should you do? Is this something that's worth looking into? Is this something that you should be recommending to your school district? What are you going to do about it? The answer to this depends on understanding what these numbers mean and how they are derived. The third example, imagine that you're reading an advertisement in your professional information sheet about a company who has devised a new intervention program for children in elementary school who have great difficulty with the math curriculum. So there is this new intervention and the company claims a very high success rate and indeed point to a research paper where they have studied this with a sample of 20 children, and they claim that the children who received the intervention improved, and they improved by a possibly impressive 15% on a math test, and they give this specific information, a t-value of 2.04 and a p-value of 0.07. What are you supposed to do with this information? Is this a program you should be interested in? Do you just go out and buy it? Do you want to learn more about it? The answer to this question depends on understanding what this study really shows and how it should be interpreted. As a fourth example, let's say you have your own idea from your own practice and experience about how to help children with developmental disorders communicate better. So we're talking about children with very low communication skills, and you have some ideas from practice. So you develop your own program, you try it out informally on 20 children that you work with or that you supervise the work on, and it turns out that 13 of these children actually improve from apparently from your intervention. So 13 improve, 7 don't improve. That sounds like a substantial majority. So is this a good idea? Should you be using more of your time, more resources? Is this a good idea for using the children's time working on this intervention? Should you continue to develop and use it? Should you recommend it to others? The answer to this question depends on understanding the importance of getting 13 out of 20 to improve. So these are all quantitative questions, and indeed, they are to a large extent statistics questions, and the answers to these questions that are from your field depend on your understanding of statistics in particular and on research methods more general. Because the correct answers to these questions also depends on understanding how the studies were set up and what they could possibly demonstrate. So starting at the little more general level, why do you need to know about research methods if you're not going to be a researcher? The answer is you need this in order to be responsible and competent special needs education professional, because you will have to be able to distinguish different kinds of knowledge, and you will have to be able to know when to be confident about something and when you need to be less confident, so that you can evaluate the research behind assessments and interventions. And this is not something that we can teach you now, because new assessments and new interventions are going to come out, and you need to be able to evaluate these yourself as they appear or as they are improved. Also, in order to be able to decide what to use and how to interpret it. And this concerns both individual assessments and individual interventions, as well as policy matters in education. So if your job is to work with individuals, you will need research methods and statistics to decide what to do with your own individuals. But having a master's in special needs education also gives you other possibilities to work in sectors that have to do with planning and policy and assessment. And there you will need to have a different kind of overview and understanding that will let you contribute to decisions about more general approaches to assessment intervention in special needs education. In this respect, I recommend that you watch a YouTube video. It is actually a somewhat long talk of a bit more than an hour, a presentation regarding a proposed intervention for autistic children to learn to communicate, which is an old one, has been well researched, and many lessons have been learned from it. And there you will see how important it is, both to the professionals as well as to the individuals and their families, to have a good grasp of what research methods and statistics, how they help understand and interpret data and actually save us, not only from wasting our time, but also from misleading and actually making people's lives worse when using interventions that aren't really supported by the evidence. So this is a very instructive talk, and I recommend that you all watch it and reflect on it. Now, why do we teach methods in plural and not just one? This is a very important question, and I hope that by the end of the course, you will have realized that there are different kinds of questions in terms of the kinds of knowledge that we want to find out, the kind of knowledge that we want to obtain. And there are also different ways to obtain knowledge. And this is associated with how confident we are in the knowledge we obtained, in how general the knowledge is. So how confidently we can use this knowledge to reason about other cases, and how we can apply this knowledge and where we can apply it. When is it justified to use this knowledge and when it is not? So different methods are associated with different kinds of all of these. And it's very important to be clear about, for example, when you are learning about an opinion versus when you're learning about a supposed fact. Opinions and facts are very different things. They're both important for different reasons in different cases. But when it comes to facts, it's also very important to know how well a stated fact is actually supported by evidence. And this becomes very important because a fact that's well supported should be a stronger basis for decisions. But something that's claimed to be a fact but isn't actually very strongly supported should probably not be treated as a solid basis for making decisions that affect people's lives. Now, how is statistics factoring in all of this? Why do you need to learn statistics if you're not going to be running your own studies? Well, first of all, some of you are going to be running your own studies because you're going to do a master's thesis, which is a research thesis. And many of you will choose to do quantitative methods in your thesis. Others will choose to do qualitative methods. It may seem to some of you at this point that qualitative methods are easier. This is not the case. This is wrong. Qualitative methods may seem easier when you don't really understand them, and when you think that qualitative methods is just making stuff up and talking about it. And it seems that people who are untrained in methods sometimes have this misconception. Actually, all methods are very systematic ways of obtaining knowledge, interpreting knowledge, and understanding the limitations of the obtained knowledge. This is true for all kinds of systematic and organized collection. And doing a good document analysis or a good interview study is actually as hard as doing any good experimental or other data analysis, quantitative data analysis. Doing an interview is not sitting down with a bunch of friends and talking about stuff and just writing it up later. That is not research methods. Uh, Doing a good quantitative research study requires you to know about how to design, how to carry out, how to collect the data, how to process the data, how to analyze, and how to interpret the findings from the data. So that's a reason to learn statistics from many of you. A second reason, which is very important and is important to every one of you, is in order to be able to understand educational research, in particular special needs research. So not everything is known about special needs education. In fact, very little is factually known with confidence at this point. New ideas will come out, new studies will be conducted, new conclusions will be drawn, new assessments, new interventions will be proposed for the domain that you will be working in. So there will be new research reported, and we are not going to be around to interpret this for you as you are doing your job. It will be part of your job to be able to understand what the new findings are and how they may affect your practice. The next reason for learning statistics is to be able to interpret and report assessment results. Pretty much all assessment tests are based on statistics. This may not make much sense right now because you haven't studied tests, but the truth is that tests are statistical tools. So in order to be able to understand what a test score means and what you should do about it, you really need to understand the statistics that goes into creating the test, at least at a basic level, so that you can understand what the scores actually say and what they do not say. And finally, you need to learn statistics in order to be a responsible special needs education professional, in the sense of giving responsible and justified answers to practical questions of assessment and intervention in your field. There is no way you will be able to run these evaluations and give justified answers without understanding how assessments and interventions are statistically presented, statistically evaluated. And finally, there may be personal reasons that you will appreciate once you have acquired the tools of statistics. For example, understanding statistics will help you evaluate reports in the news, and knowing what seems trustworthy and what doesn't will enable you to make some decisions, some more informed decisions. For example, lifestyle, dietary, medical decisions, because you will be able to understand the findings that underlie advertisements, proposals, announcements, or news. You will be able to look up the studies and see what they actually found and know how much you can trust these findings. And overall, to better understand information that is presented to you that is dependent on quantitative research, which is most of it. So some of you may object that you really don't feel comfortable with numbers. Before we go into the detailed answer to this, I have to say that if you really are very uncomfortable with numbers, you should probably find something else to do with your life, because being in special needs education, and especially as a master's level graduate, requires you to be responsibly using numbers. That is not only because you may be asked to help children with math difficulties. And in that case, you should really understand what you will be trying to explain, but also because of all the reasons I gave you before. Because you need to be able to understand assessment scores, you need to be able to understand uh, intervention findings, you need to be able to evaluate the confidence that you can put into various announcements and recommendations. So if you really can't deal with numbers, do something else. But having said that, there's not that much that you need to do here. So we're not going to do math. We're really only going to be using elementary school knowledge. And this is not an exaggeration. You can add, subtract, multiply, and divide numbers, and that's it. We don't need any fancy math. So the level of math that you're going to need in statistics is the same or maybe even less than the math you need for basic competence in special needs education. It is the mathematicians who do the math and the computers who run the actual calculations. So you will not really need to do anything demanding in these respects, nothing that you wouldn't be expected to do as an elementary school graduate. Your job will be to be able to think critically about evidence, to think about the uncertainty and the confidence, and to do that in an applied way in your field. And that will enable you to see the world from a quantitative point of view, not necessarily as an alternative. So you don't have to change a worldview, but this is an additional worldview that will be able to give you access to a much richer information basis. So you will be able to process more information, and that can really change your life. So you will acquire competence in a new domain, you will develop skills you need in your field, you will be able to see things from a richer perspective, you will be able to appreciate the uncertainty that is everywhere without being paralyzed by it, and understand that things differing doesn't mean that you cannot make confident and justified choices. So you will be able to make justified use of variable information, be able to make informed, responsible decision that will make you feel more confident that you chose the right thing. And in general, learning statistics will be able to help you figure out what you can trust more and what you can be more confident about. So these are all the reasons that you should learn statistics.